Hey, my friends. It's Mary Rose. It's Wednesday, and here we are at 1 p.m. Pacific time to talk about story structure and writing craft. So good to see you all. I think that you probably know the drill by now, but just in case you're watching on Facebook, you can do the little thing in the blue banner. Go to that link and just give permission to show your name. It's always nice to know who's here. And I can see from the comments that came in that somebody, I'm not going to say who, I'm not going to call out anybody, but showed up an hour early. And I just want to apologize if you thought that I had stood you up. I did not. I'm here at 1 p.m. Pacific time. I'm in California, so it takes a little bit of a mathematical calculation to figure out exactly where that might be wherever you are. So mark it on your calendar, because if I'm not going to be here, I'll tell you, but I've been here every week without fail. And for those of you who are new to the live stream, I'm Mary Rosewood. I am an author. You can see my most recent book behind me. Yes, here it is behind me, Alice's Farmer Rabbit's Tale. I'm best known for my middle grade fiction, a category that I dearly, dearly, dearly love. And I'm also founder of Path of the Storyteller, which is my own platform for teaching story structure and writing craft, for mentoring writers and helping them level up so that their work is truly at pro level and ready to be seen by the marketplace and the world at large. So if that's you, you've come to the right place. I am excited about this week's topic because it's just come across my desk recently, shall we say, that feeling of opening a book and beginning to read and very quickly realizing, oh, this isn't really the beginning. It's sort of skipping ahead a little bit. So when is this going to get started? It's just the clearing of the throat, the preamble, the warming up. It's not a great feeling as a reader to open a story and to feel like, okay, when is this going to get started? And I believe that those of you who are out there who have astute insight into the nature of good writing are going to recognize this feeling. It's not what we want our readers to experience. We want them to plunge into the story. And that means it's our job to start at the right place. And that is our topic today. How do we know exactly when to begin our story? It's not easy to know. And very many experienced writers go back and rewrite the openings of their books many times. They might try lots of different openings. They might, give a few different versions in their revision process to really find the correct opening. So if you find this mysterious, just know that you're not alone. It is a professional level problem. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I have a couple of tips for you of what to do, and I have I'm afraid to say, a couple of red flags to share as well. So stick around for that. These red flags are the kinds of openings that we see all too often in stories that are a bit of a sign that you might not have started your storytelling in the optimal place for the reader. Okay? If you've got questions and comments, you know what to do. You leave them for me. We're going to always leave time for questions and answers at the end. So, first point. Why is it so difficult to know where to begin? Well, if your hero was born at the moment of the story's beginning, then you might say, well, that's important. I have to go back to the day of their birth and tell the whole story from that point on. But it's the rare tale that needs to begin at the moment of the hero's birth. So as a consequence, most of us are writing stories in which our hero has a history, right? Our hero's been around for a while. Maybe it's 11 years like Harry Potter. Maybe it's 30 years like Hamlet. Maybe it's 50 years like Bilbo Baggins. We don't meet our hero at the moment of their birth. Where do we meet them? Well, we meet them at the moment that the story is about to begin. Now, that's the question. How do we know when the story is about to begin, right? So that has to do with story structure and what makes up a first act But before we get into that, I just really want to emphasize this point because it actually does come as a little bit of a shock sometimes to writers, that our job is not to put everything on the page. When we are drafting, we're so eager to put stuff on the page, to generate word count, to generate pages, that we're just glad to have anything to put on the page. But that's not our job, because we're artists, and artists are involved with the discipline of deciding what to leave out. Think of the Mona Lisa. It's in a frame. What do we see in the frame? We see the Mona Lisa, we see her mysterious smile, we see her sidelong glance, and we see that kind of mysterious background. It's not a picture of the Mona Lisa over the course of her entire life. It's not a sequence of panels that shows us every moment in the Mona Lisa's life. We are getting a glimpse of her at this moment, this very interesting moment. Do we know what she's smiling about? No. Do we know exactly, where she's glancing, or where she was just glancing, where she's about to glance? No. The artist has made a choice. The artist decides what to put in the frame and what to leave out. This is the very essence of the artist's job. If we didn't create meaning and coherence by leaving things out, we could just say, hey, who needs art? Just look at life. There it is, the unedited jumble of existence. It's out there. You don't need me. Just look out the window, people, right? This is what life is like. This is what people do every day. We turn to art for something different. We turn to art for exactly that experience of life edited, curated, arranged with intention in order to demonstrate meaning. So that's heady stuff, I know, but it is sort of the foundation of everything I'm going to say here, because our job is to leave stuff out. If it's not part of the art, we leave it out. All right. Okay, I mentioned the Mona Lisa. Since we're feeling highbrow today, let's talk about Hamlet, whom I already mentioned. We don't meet Hamlet, although I was a very interesting person, right? One of the most interesting people in all of literature. We don't meet him as a little 5-year-old Danish prince running around the castle. We don't meet him as a 10-year-old bored with his studies. We meet him, most scholars will say, around the age of 30, although with Shakespeare, there's always questions about these things. But we don't meet him until he's rather on in years. He's got 30 years of history behind him. Why does Shakespeare choose to withhold the first 30 years of Hamlet's life and start that story where he does? Well, that's where the storytelling starts. We meet Hamlet just before he is about to encounter the ghost of his recently murdered father. Boom. That's what kicks the story into motion. And so therefore, the first 30 years of Hamlet's life, although interesting to Hamlet, are not part of the storytelling. It's part of what's outside the frame. So one of the reasons that we writers find it difficult to know where the story starts is because we lack clarity about this essential point. Our job is not to put everything on the page. Our job is to curate and edit and choose what goes in the frame of our story. And when it comes to narrative, we start our story where the storytelling starts, and we ourselves may not be crystal clear about what that moment is. So I'm going to talk about that for sure, because I think that is the main issue for many writers, to define when the storytelling starts and thus know where to begin telling your story. But there's one other obstacle that I want to flag for you guys, and then we can talk about it. Another reason that writers start their stories in the wrong place or fail to start where the storytelling starts is not just because maybe they're not clear about it, but because they are so imaginatively full of world building. There's so much backstory. They've invented in their own minds such a detailed uh, arena for this story to take place. I will say that the fantasy writers out there, the people who are writing an invented world, may be a little bit more prone to this because often the invention of the world is elaborate and it's very different than the world that we inhabit every day. And therefore, the writer believes that it requires a tremendous amount of explaining, that the reader won't know what's going on at all until some of this stuff is explained. And so what they do is they feel that they've got to explain a bunch first, and then the story can begin. And these writers, too, with good intentions, will have beginnings that are not exactly in the right spot, but it's for not the same reason. It's not because they don't know where this actual storytelling for the hero begins. It's because they're so eager. They have so much to tell the reader, and they're so convinced that nothing that they then offer is going to mean much until they lay out the rules of the world. So they really feel that they've got to get that done first. All right, so these are the two motives. As you can see, writers are very well intentioned. It's not that they don't want their readers to have a good experience. It's just that this work is difficult, requires craft, and it requires that we know what we're doing. I will add actually one more thing, which is that a writer who is drafting is bound, and this is a terrific thing, is bound to overwrite and work out a lot of stuff on paper having to do with their hero's life up until this point, having to do with the world building. But when that writer goes to revise, they may not have a sufficient clarity of the discipline of revising to know what to do with all that material. And so they just leave it at the beginning, not where it belongs. All right. So let's address these issues bit by bit. First of all, start where the storytelling starts. Let's talk a bit about what we mean by storytelling. How do you know where the storytelling starts? Quick review. Your story, like pretty much any story, is going to involve the experiences of a central character. This character is someone that I refer to as the hero. So this is the hero of your tale. Now, the hero of your tale is, whether they know it or not, in a situation that is not sustainable. The world that they're in, the psychic state that they're in, the emotional or spiritual state that they're in is not sustainable. Something is wrong with it. And I'm a very positive and optimistic person, as my friends will tell you. So when I say that something is wrong with it, it's not that I'm assuming that everybody's life is miserable. What I'm telling you is that the need for a story arises from the need for transformation. And if everything is perfect, then we've already reached the happy ending, and we don't need to have our hero go on a story. We don't need to have them go on an adventure of transformation if nothing needs changing. So there's a hero in a world, and that world is not sustainable in some fashion. However, it may have been kind of balanced the way a house of cards is balanced in this precarious, unsustainable way for a long time. It really depends on the nature of your hero's problem. Poor Harry Potter, left to be raised by the Dursleys due to his unfortunate beginnings and these sad events of his birth, which I don't need to recap for all of you, I'm sure, has been there for 11 years. It hasn't gone well. It's not been fun. He's been living under the stairs. He's been mistreated. It's an ongoing situation, but it's not sustainable because in the rules of the world that character inhabits, the occasion of his 11th birthday is going to set a new chain of events in motion. That's an example of an ongoing situation that's not sustainable, but that has been going on for a long time. So we don't need to necessarily meet the hero of that story on his 8th birthday, do we? Nothing's going to happen on his 7th birthday, his 8th birthday, his 9th birthday, his 10th birthday. It is the occasion of his 11th birthday that sets the story in motion. And so that's where we meet him. We meet him just before. One of my favorite examples that I love to share with you guys is the tale of Bilbo Baggins in The Hobbit. Now, Bilbo is 50 years old, right? We could consider that a little elderly for a middle grade protagonist, but the point is that Bilbo has been in a state of living in his world, in his Hobbit society that is it's been sustainable, but there's something wrong on the inside. He's prosperous on the outside. He's socially acceptable on the outside. He's a successful member of society and has been so all along. But there's a bit of a ticking bomb inside of Bilbo, isn't there? Because what we learn at the very beginning of that story is that he is not perhaps 100% Hobbit, and that there's an unexpressed part of his nature that it's time for it to be expressed. He has a bit of Tookish blood in him, we learn. And an adventure is going to come calling for Bilbo, whether he asks for it or not, because the time is up. It's 50th birthday, or at age 50, his time is up. The storytelling gods have so decreed, and so they send an adventure to come calling for him. So where does the storytelling begin? Where does the story begin? What's page 1 of The Hobbit? We meet him just before this adventure comes calling in the person of Gandalf the Wizard, who knows all about Bilbo's true nature, knew him from when he was a child, and can see what a kind of constrained, stick in the mud, conventional, superficial person, Hobbit, we can call Hobbit a person, Bilbo has turned out to be. He's not fully vibrant. He's not his full self. He's only part of himself. And so right before the adventure that's going to allow him to expand and grow begins is when the storytelling starts. So your hero has been coping with whatever world you've imagined for them. Your hero's been coping. Maybe they've been coping perfectly well, like Bilbo, or maybe they've been enduring an unhappy situation like Harry Potter. But at some point, this house of cards is going to topple. It's not going to be sustainable anymore. Think of our hero Hamlet, who has, maybe he's been perfectly fine being the Prince of Denmark while his father was the king. But at some point, something happens to disrupt the apple cart, which is this: his father is murdered. This is a very big disruption. The whole order of society is toppled. The order of his family is toppled. He loses his father. And yet we all know that what happens when a king dies and there's a prince is that the prince typically takes over the job in a hereditary monarchy, which is what we have in the tale of Hamlet. Is Hamlet given the job? He's not. In fact, his uncle promptly marries his mother, the queen, and declares himself king. This is a huge disruption. So the kingdom has been okay for all this time, but something dreadful has happened. When do we meet Hamlet? This piece of it has already happened, because that's the kind of efficient storyteller Shakespeare is. He kind of upsets the apple cart before we even get to curtain up. Here's the beginning. But he also places us in the experience of Hamlet coping with this disruption just before the even bigger disruption is about to occur, which is the appearance of his father's ghost, who basically is going to tell him the truth of what happened and give him an adventure to go on, give him a mission. So if there's any confusion in your mind about how to know where the storytelling starts, ask yourself, what happens to disrupt the world that your hero has been living in? Whether your hero liked that world, didn't see anything wrong with it, whether that hero was miserable in that world and just was feeling victimized and crushed by it, or whether your hero understood that it wasn't a perfect world but was coping the best they could. It doesn't matter. That situation is not sustainable. There's another kind of situation, by the way, that's not sustainable, and that is childhood. You will know, of course, that many stories are categorized as coming of age stories. And the reason is that coming of age, growing up, moving from the role of the child to the role of the member of society, who's got adult responsibilities, is expected to operate according to values, is expected to know right from wrong and just take their position, right, in the community. Um, that is a moment that comes for all of us, and that is part of the universal appeal of the coming of age story. So if you are writing about a character who is young but it's time to come of age, that too is an example of an unsustainable situation. One example that I love to use for the type of beginning of a coming of age story is the great Kipling short story Rikki Tikki Tavi. Ricky, our hero in that story, is a mongoose, and he's a baby mongoose. He's young. When we begin this, when the storytelling begins, Ricky is a baby living in his burrow with his parents, and we are told by the narrator that one day a great flood came and washed Ricky out of his burrow, and he ends up in the garden of this bungalow where he is found by the human family who lives there. That flood is the hand of storytelling fate that comes out and whisks Ricky into his adventure. That is the destabilizing force. So where does the story begin? Do we get 2 pages of Ricky's happy life in the burrow? Do we get to meet his parents and learn all about the habits and preferences of the baby mongoose? Listen, it might be adorable, but that's not the point of this story. It's a coming of age story. So we meet Ricky as the flood comes and takes him out, and his adventure begins. So I want you to ask yourself what that moment is in your storytelling. What happened very near the beginning of the tale? And it must be very near the beginning of the tale. That is the whole point of this discussion. To destabilize the world your hero is in. Chances are you know, but you may not have placed it near the beginning of the tale. You might have placed it 20 pages in or 30 pages in. If that's the case, you might want to ask yourself how that could get closer to the beginning. All right. Now, I'm not talking about what many writers call the call to adventure or the invitation to adventure. That is a really important beat of story structure. And it is not necessarily where we want to begin our story. The invitation to adventure is what is offered to the hero after their world has been destabilized, after things have fallen apart, and we've gotten to know exactly what this hero's particular need for change might be. We get to know that Bilbo is not your ordinary hobbit before the terms of the adventure that are presented to him are made clear. Right? We get to understand Bilbo's need before the storyteller says, look, here's the deal. Bunch of dwarves need to go on this mission to go meet a dragon and steal back their ancestral gold. We'd like for you to go with them. That happens after. That is indeed a call to adventure. But we don't start with that. And there's a good reason why. Because the adventure, the mission, the second act activity, if you will, that is going to occupy our hero for more than half of the book is what needs to be done on the outside. That's what must be accomplished in the external world. But the story is what goes on the inside. The storytelling is the coming of age. The storytelling is the prince taking revenge on the murder of his father, the king, and putting the kingdom back to write. The storytelling is what it does to Bilbo to bust way, way outside of his comfort zone and take on this adventure that turns him into a very, very different person by the end of that book. We start with the storytelling. The call to adventure is essential, but what it sets in motion is the plot. So I like to differentiate a little bit between those two words. We don't necessarily need to start where the plot begins, but we must start where the storytelling begins. So that is the key to knowing how to begin. Now, I've already said that writers sometimes avoid doing that because they are kind of enamored of letting us know so much about their hero before time, if you will, before the world is destabilized. But I'm here to tell you, my friends, that if you start where the storytelling begins, I know without question that you can weave in everything that we need to know about what your hero has been through prior to that moment as you go. You can include what we need to know about your hero in the telling of your tale as you draft the first act without having to put it in the front of the storytelling. In fact, I want to talk now about some of the red flags that can come up, and we see them all too often, alas, when a well-intentioned writer doesn't trust that they must start their story where the storytelling begins, doesn't believe that they can weave in everything the reader needs to know about the character and the world as the story is being told. What do those writers do? Well-intentioned, but these are sort of desperate moves. Here's the first red flag. And I'm willing to say that this might be controversial for some of you. The prologue. Oh, the urge to write a prologue. It's so common and it's so strong. But you must ask yourselves, why does your book need a prologue? Why? What's in it for the reader? You as the writer are looking for a way that sounds okay to tell backstory, to set things up, or to create a mood. That's another reason that I see a lot. Before actually letting your reader know what the story is about or even who it's about. The prologue it's just one of those impulses that I implore you to resist. It's hard to know when there might be a good reason for a prologue. I'm willing to go on a case-by-case basis about it, that there might be some book out there that is better for having a prologue. I just can't think of what that book is. And I read a lot of books. So feel free to argue with me in the comments if you feel so moved. The prologue is for the author. The prologue is the writer's attempt to sort of start out with a little appetizer, a little demonstration of, ooh, this book's going to be good, you know. But the thing is, the reader is already on board. Like, you've got their attention. What's the first impression that you want to make? It's the most powerful one. I mean, your reader's going to decide very quickly whether they're going to stick with this book or not. Don't save the opening for later. Don't make your poor reader slog through a couple of pages, even a short prologue, right? It's just a couple of pages with no clear hero in sight, no sense of a story starting. We're not actually even really in the book yet. I'm going to say no reason, but I don't like to speak in total absolutes when it comes to art. It's hard for me to think of a reason why your book will be better with the prologue. So if you've got the impulse to put prologue on your book, or you've already done so, I mean no offense, but please reconsider. I considered a red flag. Here's another red flag. Again, I'm not calling anybody out. I'm sorry if this is going to hurt your feelings. The dream sequence. If your book starts with a dream of some kind, if we are plunged into a situation where your hero is doing something exciting or your hero is reliving a moment from the past, and the messages of importance are being given, or things are a little bit psychedelic even and starting to get weird, then the reader is told that, "Ah," and then she woke up, her heart pounding in her chest. Thank goodness it was only a dream, or oh no, that dream again, how she hated having that dream. Oh, my friends, please don't do this. This is kind of like the prologue impulse. We don't trust the hero in the story to be enough. And so we want to start by, letting off a flash bomb right in front of the reader's face. Like, look, smoke, mirrors, bright lights, shiny objects. We're trying to make some kind of impact, some impression, because we think it's going to hook the reader in. And again, this is well intentioned, but it reflects a misunderstanding of what exactly the reader has come for. The reader has come to you for a story. What is a story? A hero on a journey of transformation with some kind of clear mission to accomplish. And in the end, it's all going to mean something important. It's going to be worth the trip. That's a story. The minute that your reader starts to suspect that there is no story, that these are just words on a page, that this is just a lot of smoke and mirrors, your reader has other things to do, I fear. They have other books to read, they've got shows to watch, movies to watch, maybe they'll just move on to some other activity. It's our job to be so disciplined in our storytelling craft that our reader knows instantly who the story is about, and a sense of that there is a story and that it's going to be worth reading. That sounds hard to do. It's teachable and learnable. I mean, that's what Path of the Storyteller is all about. I am a dyed-in-the-wool firm believer in good story structure. And part of good story structure is not allowing yourself to abuse the reader's time, patience, and attention. It's a tremendous gift that the reader gives you when they say, okay, I'm going to sit down and read your book. But they're not going to stick with it if you don't engage them. It isn't like hunkering down in a dark movie theater, right? And they've turned off the lights and the movie plays. It actually takes a fair amount of discomfort to pry most viewers out of a comfortable seat in a darkened theater for which they've paid good money, and get them to say, that was a waste of time. I'm not going to sit here to the end. But people put down books all the time, and they put them down rather easily. So the burden is on us, storytelling friends. So it's one of the great gifts you can give to your reader is to get that story started. That means don't fake them out with a dream sequence. If you met somebody at a party or in the park, or just a new acquaintance, maybe a friend introduces you, and the first thing they did to you was fake you out somehow. They said to you, oh, hi, Mary Rose, it's nice to meet you. Oh, my name's Joe. I'm an astronaut. I just got back from Mars. And I'd be like, Joe, are you pulling my leg? He'd be like, no, I'm not. This is what I just did. And then, 2 pages in, a minute and a half in, he's like, forget it. Yeah, I was pulling your leg. I'm not astronaut. I didn't come from Mars. What's my opinion of this guy? Am I going to be eager to sit around and talk to him? Or am I already thinking like, okay, I can't get those 2 minutes back again? Don't disrespect your reader that way. We try to stay away from the opening of the dream sequence. Here's another red flag, my friends, that you may be starting in the wrong place. It's related to the dream sequence, but it is different. I call it the waking up scene. Now, how many of us have been guilty of writing a scene in which our protagonist, our hero, the main character, is opening one eye, then another, stretching, yawning, contemplating the day to come? We've all written scenes like this. We've all started chapters like this. Some of us started books like this. It is not necessary to begin telling the story on the day, on the moment of waking up on the day that the storytelling starts. You can skip ahead. You can go right to the moment where the storytelling starts and start there. We don't need to see your hero waking up. We don't need to see her getting dressed. We don't need to see her morning ablutions or coming down to breakfast. We don't need to see any of that. What we do need to see is the moment when her father walks through the kitchen with an axe and your hero says, "Where's Papa going with that axe?" Well, welcome to the first line of Charlotte's Web, my friends. Now, in a recent live stream, we did a very in-depth talk of third acts, endings, and I used Charlotte's Web, I think, to great effect to talk to you about some of the complexities of what makes a third act. I'm here to tell you that Charlotte's Web is also an absolute model for how to begin where the storytelling starts. We do not meet the initial hero of Charlotte's Web is the girl Fern, who's an 8-year-old girl who lives on a farm, and something has happened during the night. And what happened during the night is that a litter of pigs were born. We're going to learn all this in a minute. We're going to learn that a litter of pigs was born. We're going to learn that she's on a farm. We're going to learn that pigs are food. There's actually bacon in the pan. We're going to learn a lot of things about the world in which this story is now going to take place. And in a little while, this pig that was born during the night, one of these pigs, is going to take over the role of hero. The mask of hero is going to be shifted primarily to Wilbur. But in the opening pages, Wilbur is a newborn pig. And so the mask of the hero is being worn by Fern. And the storytelling begins the instant Fern's world is destabilized. There is no preamble. The first line of the book is, "Where's Papa going with that axe?" Well, and we're off to the races. There's literally no way to put the book down when you have an opening like that. But it's not there for shock effect. It's not there, to throw a smoke in the face of the reader. It is there because the storytelling is in motion at speed. It's not even warming up. It's just there. It starts. It's going. It's like hopping on a moving train practically. So everything we need to know about the world of the story is woven in as Fern reacts to this news and immediately springs into action to save the life of this runt pig that her father is not thinking about going to slaughter, is not contemplating, is not threatening to. He has an axe in his hand and he is on his way to the barn to do it. She has to run to catch up with him to prevent this thing from happening. This is what it means to start when the storytelling starts. Not only is the story in motion, but the hero is in motion too. He's immediately engaged in action, not rumination, not waking up, not coming down the stairs in her pajamas saying, "Oh, what's for breakfast, Mom?" That line is the first line. It's not the line that appears on the middle of page 3. So if you think you've done a good job of starting your book in the scene where the storytelling starts, very good. I'm proud of you. But can you take it further? Is there something that you've included to set the scene, to describe the kitchen, to introduce your hero a half a page or a page before you get to the moment where the storytelling starts, that might be better left out of the frame? I challenge you. All right, we've talked about the prologue, the dream sequence, the waking up scene. No, just get us into the kitchen. And my last red flag. All of these are tedious for the reader, but for me personally, this is maybe the most tedious of all. The incomprehensible action sequence is what I call it. Now, this is where writers can get super frustrated because they might come back and maybe you're thinking this yourself. I would love to hear your thoughts. Please leave in the comments. But Mary Rose, you told us to start where the storytelling starts. And so obviously that means to start like with lots of action and stuff going on. And I'm just plunging the reader into the middle of the action scene. Isn't that exciting? Isn't that engaging? Is it? Well, let me ask you, is it? Do we know who these people are who are so busy fighting or fleeing or, running for their lives or locked in Mortal Kombat or whatever this action scene is? Do we know who they are? Do we know what the rules of the game are? Can we tell who's winning and who's losing? Do we even know who we're supposed to be rooting for? Or is it just very busy? Is it just very noisy? Is it just very fast and action-packed? So, if you have a book that has a lot of action in it, and you think that your reader's going to like that, if you just kind of get started in the midst of some high-stakes scene, I encourage you to remember that that might be plot, but there's not story until we have a hero that we're rooting for who has some need for change. And you would be well to weave in something before the action gets too far along. Don't make us read descriptions of physical action and swinging through trees and doing all this stuff about characters that we don't know or care about. It's not going to engage us. We're just skimming for character at this point. We're just trying to figure out who are we supposed to be rooting for. We are, as readers, seeking a viewpoint character, right? We're seeking our kind of avatar, the one that we're going to take this ride with, the hero that we readers are going to identify with, so that the way fiction works can engage in our brains. We are imagining the story as something that is happening to us. That's how fiction works. It's a fascinating, there's fascinating neuroscience about this. But fiction does not work by virtue of a reader sitting on the outside of a book, looking at the pages, saying, I'm reading, I'm reading, I'm reading, I'm reading, I'm reading, I'm reading. Turn the page, still reading, 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 rereading. That's not how fiction works. Fiction works when you start reading and you forget that you're reading. And now all of a sudden, you are having the experience of being in the story. It's immersive. Good fiction is an immersive experience. So unless we have a kind of a character that we can be during our experience, there's nothing to immerse ourselves in. If you don't give us someone to root for, a character that we can identify with in some way, through whose experience we can experience the events of the story, we have no doorway into your storytelling. We're left on the outside. The book doesn't engage. And what you'll hear readers say is, I couldn't get into it. It didn't grab me. I couldn't get into it. They are literally describing the experience of reading a text that did not fully embrace the rules of storytelling. They didn't provide a hero on a journey of transformation for the reader to literally get into. So we want our readers to get into it. That means if you have the impulse to begin your book in some crazy action sequence, maybe it's right for your book, maybe it's not. That I can't say. But make sure that you give us a hero in storytelling first. Okay, so things not to do: prologues, dream sequences, waking up scenes, and the incomprehensible action sequence. All right. Now, that's what not to do. Those are some red flags, things that I see a lot. And I talked a little bit about why it's hard, to know sometimes where to begin your story. So let me just recap. And then we'll have time to take any questions that you guys might have. And I would love to be able to answer any, even quite specific questions that you might have about choosing where to begin your own tales. So to recap, where do we start our stories? We start where the storytelling begins, or when it's about to begin. imminently about to begin. The flood is about to wash Ricky out of his burrow. Gandalf is about to arrive at Bilbo Baggins' door, right? It's just about to be Harry Potter's 11th birthday and all of that stuff that's going to happen. So it's there. It's going to be there within a page, 2 pages. It's going to about to happen. The ghost of Hamlet's father is about to arrive. Or in the case of Hamlet, his father's already been murdered, right? So we're really plunged into the middle of it. Put your hero on page 1. Don't leave your hero out of the storytelling until page 5. Your reader is instantly from the first line looking for their avatar, looking for that doorway in psychologically so that they've got someone to identify with, someone to root for. Even if your hero, your primary hero, is Wilbur the pig who was just born and is in no position to take on the role of protagonist just yet, he needs to get a little older, you must give your reader someone. E.B. White brilliantly gives us Fern, the 8-year-old, who is going to save Wilbur's life. She's not the last character in that book to save Wilbur's life, but she's the first character to save his life. And saving Wilbur's life is what that book is about, right? So we're quite on brand, if you will. The storytelling has begun. The shift of how that plot of saving Wilbur's life moves from hero to hero is yet to be discovered by the lucky reader. But we have our protagonist talking in the first line. So you too, how soon can we meet your hero? Ask yourself, challenge yourself. Are they on the first page? They really ought to be. Are they in the first paragraph? If not, why not? Are they in the first line? Could they be? It's never too soon to introduce your hero. So that's something to think about. And my last tip about it is about the backstory, because many writers will say, yes, that all sounds wonderful, but I have so much to tell my reader about the world. And so I need to draw a map. I need to have a character list. I need to explain the last 40 years of political intrigue in this kingdom that I invented. No, you don't. I have been known to ask my students lovingly, when they come to me with that, yeah, but there's so much to tell. I don't know how to get it all on the page. It's so much my readers need to know. And I say, yes. Are you telling me that your book has a world that's more complicated than Middle-earth? And they go, no, obviously I don't. And my answer then is to follow the good advice of Tolkien, who tells us enough to get on with. Tell the reader enough to get on with. No one had ever heard of a hobbit before picking up The Hobbit and reading it. And the very first line of the book is, in a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. Tolkien gets instantly to work letting us know what a hobbit is. And then brings Gandalf on. It takes a couple of paragraphs, but we meet Bilbo and we learn all about him. And then Gandalf is here and the world is destabilized and the storytelling has begun. If it takes Tolkien a paragraph or 2 to tell us enough to get on with, to introducing the realm of Middle-earth, it's not going to require maps, character lists, and a 10-page prologue. It's not going to. You can't convince me. So trust that you can weave in the backstory as needed, but only enough to get on with. You don't need to stop and include your dissertation, your dictionary of foreign languages, all that stuff. Weave it in as it's needed. If it turns out not to be needed for the story, you don't actually need to weave it in. Just because you thought of it, it doesn't mean that it necessarily serves the reader. Will you save it for another book? Maybe, if you're writing a series, but it also simply may not be necessary. It just may not be necessary. So very good. That's what I have for you guys today about how to decide where to begin your story. And I see some questions coming in. Very good. I'm going to pull one up from Nancy. Great to see you here, Nancy. And this is a great question. I bet some other people have it as well. So Nancy asked, I'm not super clear about the difference between storytelling versus plot. Does plot involve outer action? So in the way that I'm using these words today, Nancy, I'm using storytelling as a word to describe what a story truly is about, which is the transformation of the hero. That's what the storytelling is. Now, how is your hero going to be transformed? There's all kinds of ways heroes can be transformed. Sometimes they're set on an adventure to go to the lonely mountain, deal with a dragon, and then, sort out the consequences of that. Sometimes they're told, well, you've got to go see the Wizard of Oz. He's in the Emerald City. Here's how to get there. There's a yellow brick road. Just follow that, right? But that's the plot. It's what the hero must do that I consider the plot. The other word you've heard me use is the mission. It's the mission that the hero is set on or sets themselves upon that is constitutes the activity, the goal, the mission, the objective, whatever word you want to use, that occupies your hero throughout the entire second act of your story. But the mission is not the story. The plot is not the story. The story is the larger, deeper experience of the work, which involves the purpose of the plot is to transform the hero, right? That's what all of that pressure is about. Those obstacles, those challenges, those experiences that push your hero out of her comfort zone, that might trigger revelations and fresh understanding of your hero's true nature. So that's what I mean. And so of necessity, plot tends to involve outer action. One could certainly conceive of a plot where the hero's mission was one that was undertaken in a largely internal way. But I urge you to think about how even what the industry sometimes call a quiet story or a more psychological story will have external ramifications. It will show up. The story will end up out where the reader can see it, and it will be good for you and be good for your reader. So another phrase I like to use is that story is a symbolic dreamscape. And so even stories that are feel like they're more psychological have external manifestations. We can make them have external manifestations. If you just use the example of a coming of age tale, we come of age, it's psychological. It's internal, right? Our sense of ourselves changes. We go from one identity, I'm a young person and I need other people to take care of me and tell me what to do, to I am an adult member of my society. People can look to me for leadership and I am self-sufficient in a healthy way, right? I have a healthy interactivity, interdependence with others, but I'm not dependent. I'm healthily interdependent in an adult way. That's a coming of age, but it also has external signifiers. Our bodies change, our appearance changes, our relationships change. We move from one place to another. We have different experiences. So the dance between what is going on in the story and what's happening in the plot is part of the fun of writing, because we're inventing the symbolic dreamscape of external events to represent the interior journey of change. They are never disconnected in good storytelling. You're coming back to me with this, so it's a deeper level of the story. I don't think that's exactly what I'm saying, Nancy. What I'm saying is that the storytelling is the journey of transformation of the hero, and it is what the story is about fundamentally, right? But the plot or the mission, if that's easier to keep separate, is the task. It is the external purpose that your hero takes on, the thing that they are given to do or choose to do. the story of Hamlet is the transformation of a kind of I mean, he's a complicated character, so forgive me for summing this up in a way that's bound to be incomplete. But the story of an aging prince, if you will, who has to become king, including making the sacrifice that a king must make in order to return stability to his kingdom. That's what the king's job is, even if he doesn't quite, in Hamlet, survive what must be done. That's why it's a tragedy. But he fulfills his mission. He does the thing he set out to do, right? But that's the story is about that coming of age of the prince to king. But the plot is who killed his father and how does Hamlet get revenge, right? It's what he does. It's the actions that he takes. Similarly, the story of Rikki Tikki Tavi is a coming of age story. It's a baby mongoose grows up to take on the role of an adult mongoose. It's a very similar story to Hamlet, if you will, because Rikki is his job as a mongoose is to keep this garden that he lives in and its inhabitants safe from cobras, and that's his job. And so he takes on that role. And with all that goes with it, he learns how to fight. He becomes willing to sacrifice. We start to see the nobility of his character in the way Kipling presents him. But what happens is he fights snakes. That's what happens. You know, he fights snake after snake until finally he has to confront the biggest, baddest snake of all. And because he's gone through a regimen of training and preparation, which is what the second act of any story is all about, he's ready for it. But he's changed on the inside. He's not just a baby cobra. He's not just a baby mongoose who's good at fighting snakes now. His sense of who he is shifted. So that's what storytelling is all about. Transformation of the hero. Very good. Have we got any other questions from you guys? I'm going to be so interested now as you ponder where to begin your story, whether you feel that, I'm one of those people that thought I needed a prologue, a dream sequence, a waking up sequence, and a few pages of backstory before I actually allowed my reader to get going into this tale. If that's you, listen, I'm not mad at you about it, but I also want to put you on your own mission. Think of me as Gandalf. I'm giving you a mission now to serve your reader better and to trust that they will pick it up. Like they will pick it up. If you can start with where's Papa going with that axe and weave in what they need to know, they will be so pleased because you are giving them story in every line from the first line. And that is what they really have come to you for. All right. I appreciate all of you coming. Thank you for being here live. Thank you, those who participated with questions. And I look forward to seeing you next week. As always, I love it if you have ideas for topics you want me to talk about on these Wednesdays. Just leave them in the comments below. I'm really interested to know what issues and questions might be coming up in your own writing. And if there's a way that I can help you solve them, I will. That's why I'm here. For those of you who are not on my mailing list, I'd love it if you would do that. Subscribe at www.pathofthestoryteller.com. You'll be first to know about some cool stuff coming up, including the next running of the flagship Path of the Storyteller course, which will be in the fall. I'm very excited. I can't believe it's middle of June as I'm recording this now. Summer's already practically upon us, so can fall be far behind. And if you're watching on YouTube and you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, I would appreciate it if you did. It's super helpful to me. And you can even click the little bell and it will let you know next time I'm going live. Thanks for your participation. It's great to see you guys today. Happy writing. I'll see you next time.